So, this happened last year, and I still get chills thinking about it. I've never really talked about it much, but maybe sharing it will help me process everything. It all started when my roommate, Alex, and I decided to move to a cheaper apartment in a small town just outside the city. We found this place on Craigslist, and it seemed perfect. Cheap rent, decent location, and the landlord seemed chill during the walkthrough. The only weird thing was that the previous tenant had left in a hurry. The landlord just said she had some personal issues and moved out unexpectedly. After a few weeks, we started noticing some strange things. At first, it was just small stuff, like hearing footsteps in the hallway at odd hours, or things being slightly out of place. We brushed it off as maybe one of us just being forgetful. One night, Alex and I were in our own room when we heard a loud thud from the basement. We both got out and looked at each other, eyes wide. We never went down there. It was this creepy, unfinished space that we used for storage. Alex grabbed a baseball bat, and we cautiously made our way downstairs. When we got to the basement, we saw something that made our blood run cold. In the center of the floor was a large, crude symbol, drawn in what looked like chalk. Around it were small, burnt-out candles and some other unidentifiable objects. It looked like some kind of ritual setup that you see on movies. We freaked out and called the landlord immediately. The landlord came over, took one look at the basement, and his face went pale. He admitted that the previous tenant had been involved with some local group, but assured us they were harmless. He quickly cleaned up the mess and told us not to worry about it. Things only got weirder from there. We started getting random knocks on our door at all hours of the night. When we'd open the door, no one would be there. We also found strange symbols and messages written on scraps of paper and left on our doorstep. The messages were cryptic, talking about joining the family, embracing the light. One evening, I came home from work and found Alex sitting on the couch, looking shaken. He handed me a flyer he found taped to our door. It was for some kind of community gathering happening that weekend, hosted by this group called The Seekers. The flyer had the same symbol we saw in the basement. We debated whether to go, but our curiosity got the better of us. Plus, we figured it might give us some answers. When we arrived at the address on the flyer, it was this old community center. There were about a dozen people there, all dressed in white robes. They were standing in a circle, chanting softly. We tried to leave, but one of them spotted us and invited us in. They were surprisingly friendly and insisted we stay for the ceremony. Against our better judgment, we agreed. As the ceremony started, the chanting grew louder, and the air felt thick with tension. They began passing around a chalice filled with some kind of liquid, and one by one, each person took a sip. When it got to us, Alex and I politely declined, but the group's demeanor changed instantly. They weren't friendly anymore. They demanded we drink and join the family. That's when we bolted. We ran out of there and didn't stop until we got home. We immediately started packing our things, determined to get out of that town for good. As we were loading up the car, we noticed several of the robed members standing at the end of our street, just watching us. It was beyond creepy. We managed to get out of there and crashed at a friend's place in the city for a while. A few days later, we went back to the apartment to grab the last of our stuff. The landlord was there, looking furious. He accused us of causing trouble and scaring off other tenants. We didn't stick around to argue. To this day, I still don't know what that group was really about or what they wanted from us. Every now and then, I still get random messages from unknown numbers with the same cryptic symbols and messages about joining the family. I just hope they never find us again. This all started about 2 years ago. I was fresh out of college, job hunting like crazy, and feeling pretty down on my luck. I moved back in with my parents in this small town. It's one of those places where everybody knows everybody, and there's not much to do. One day, while scrolling through Facebook, I saw a post in one of the local community groups about a self-improvement group that was looking for new members. They promised networking opportunities, personal growth, and even job connections. Desperate for a change, I thought, why not? The meeting was at this old, creepy community center on the outskirts of town. When I got there, I was surprised by how many people had shown up. There were all sorts of folks, from young professionals to older retirees. The leader, a guy named David, seemed really charismatic. He was in his late 40s, well-dressed, and had this weirdly calming presence. The first few meetings were pretty normal. We did some group activities, listened to talks about motivation and success, and shared personal goals. It felt kind of like a support group, but with more structure. Everyone was super friendly, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Things started getting weird around the fifth meeting. David began talking about levels and how advancing through these levels would unlock our true potential. He said we needed to commit more fully to the group and trust the process. He started separating us into smaller subgroups and assigning mentors who were more experienced members. My mentor, Lisa, was really intense. She was always texting me, checking in, and asking about my progress. At first, I thought she was just being supportive, but then she started making me do these weird tasks. Like one time she asked me to burn a piece of paper with something negative written on it in the middle of the night. Another time, she made me fast for 24 hours and only drink this gross herbal tea. She said it was all part of the process of cleansing myself. One night, I got a message from Lisa saying there was a special meeting at David's house, and I needed to be there. I was hesitant but curious, so I went. David's house was this massive, secluded mansion on a hill. When I arrived, there were about 20 of us, all the chosen ones, apparently. David led us into this dimly lit basement. There were candles everywhere, and this weird, sweet-smelling incense filled the air. We sat in a circle, and David started talking about how we were ready for the next step, how we had proven our loyalty. He said it was time to meet the source, the true power behind our group. Then, it struck me. This group is a cult. They brought out this guy blindfolded and tied up. David said he was a traitor, someone who tried to leave the group and betray us. My heart was pounding. David handed each of us a knife and told us to cut our palms, letting the blood drip into this large, ornate bowl. He said it was a blood pact, sealing our loyalty to each other and the source. I was freaking out, but too scared to back out. Everyone else was doing it, and I didn't want to be labeled a traitor too. So, I cut my palm, wincing as the blood dripped into the bowl. After everyone had done it, David started chanting something in a language I didn't understand. The room felt colder. I had to GTFO ASAP. So I made up some excuse about feeling sick and left as quickly as I could. Once I was outside, I ran to my car and drove home, shaking the whole way. The next day, I blocked Lisa and everyone else from the group on my phone and social media. I told my parents everything, and they were horrified. We contacted the police, but by the time they investigated, David and the group had vanished. The community center was abandoned, and there was no trace of them anywhere. I still get chills thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't left that night. I've done a lot of reading since then, and it turns out these modern-day cults are more common than you'd think. They prey on vulnerable people, offering them a sense of belonging and purpose. If you ever come across something like this, please be careful. It's terrifying how easily they can suck you in. Stay safe, everyone, and trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Last year, I had this experience that still messes with my head. I mean, I was always the skeptical type, never bought into ghost stories or urban legends. But what happened to me and my friends? Yeah, that changed everything. My friend Chris and I were looking for something to do on a boring Saturday. We'd been binge watching these YouTube videos about urban exploring, and we thought, why not try it ourselves? There's this old abandoned asylum about an hour's drive from our place. We'd heard rumors about it being haunted, but more interestingly, there were whispers about a cult that used to use it for their rituals back in the 80s. We convinced our friends Erica and Clyde to join us. Erica's always down for an adventure, and Clyde's the type who likes to prove he's not scared of anything. We packed our bags with some flashlights, snacks, and a couple of knives, just in case, and headed out in Chris's car. The drive was calm at first. We were joking around, blasting music, and talking about how we'd probably just find some raccoons and broken furniture. But as we got closer, the roads got narrower and more overgrown. It felt like we were heading straight into the middle of nowhere. When we finally reached the asylum, it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. The place was massive, with broken windows and graffiti all over the walls. The front gate was hanging off its hinges, and the whole area was dead silent. We parked the car and made our way inside. Inside, the air was thick and musty. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and there were old rusted beds and medical equipment scattered around. It was creepy, but not terrifying. Not yet, anyway. We started exploring, making our way through the different rooms. We found some old patient records, broken furniture, and a lot of empty spaces. After a while, we came across a door that led to the basement. The moment we opened it, a cold wind hit us, and we could hear faint voices echoing from below. Clyde, being Clyde, insisted we check it out. "It's probably just other explorers," he said. We all knew it wasn't, but none of us wanted to back out. We descended the stairs, flashlights flickering as we went deeper into the darkness. The basement was a maze of narrow hallways and small rooms. The voices grew louder. We could make out chanting. It wasn't English, or at least not any kind of English I'd ever heard. We followed the sound to a large room at the end of the hallway. Inside, we saw a group of people in dark robes standing in a circle around an old stone altar. There were candles burning, and the air smelled like a mix of incense and something rotten. We stood there frozen, watching them. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It was like my brain refused to process it. Then one of them turned and saw us through the dark. The chanting stopped, and they all turned to look at us. It was dead silent for a moment. A tall guy with a shaved head, probably the leader, stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice echoing in the room. Chris grabbed my arm and whispered, "We need to go, now." We turned and ran, not looking back. The sound of footsteps followed us, but I didn't dare to see how close they were. We bolted up the stairs, through the halls, and out of the asylum. We didn't stop running until we were back at the car. We sped off, hearts pounding, not saying a word. When we finally got back to Chris's place, we sat in the car for a while, trying to catch our breath and make sense of what had just happened. Clyde broke the silence. "What the hell was that?" No one had an answer. Over the next few days, we tried to find information about the asylum and the cult, but there was nothing concrete, just more rumors and stories. We all agreed to keep what we saw to ourselves. I haven't been back to that place, and I don't think I ever will. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that basement and those people in the robes. I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed a moment longer. I don't know if they were part of some local urban legend, or if we stumbled onto something much darker. All I know is that experience changed me. There's stuff out there we can't explain, and maybe it's better if we don't try. I was fresh out of college, broke as hell, and desperate for a job. So when I found this ad for a live-in caretaker position in a remote area, the pay was good, the house looked decent in the pics, and the guy on the phone, Jack, seemed cool. First day there, everything seemed normal. Jack was friendly, showed me around, and introduced me to the other caretaker, Sarah. She was chill, a bit quiet, but seemed nice enough. The only weird thing was this locked room in the basement that Jack said was off limits. Said it was storage, nothing special. Days went by, and I started noticing odd stuff. Sarah and Jack were always whispering, like they had secrets. They were nice to me, but there was this tension, like they were hiding something. Late at night, I'd hear faint chanting from downstairs, like distant voices in prayer or something. Creepy as hell. One evening, I accidentally found the key to the locked room just lying on the floor. Curiosity got the better of me, so I sneaked down there when Jack and Sarah were out. What I saw chilled me to the bone. The room was covered in symbols, candles, weird-ass books on rituals, you name it. It looked straight out of a horror movie. I was about to bail when Jack caught me. He didn't get mad, just smiled this creepy smile and said, "Curiosity killed the cat, huh?" I tried to laugh it off, but he led me back upstairs, acting like nothing happened. Things got worse after that. Sarah started acting distant, like she was avoiding me. Jack kept inviting me to join their family gatherings in the basement. I always declined, making up excuses. They didn't push it, but I knew they were watching me, waiting for something. One night, I woke up to find Sarah standing over my bed, just staring. I freaked out, asked her what the hell she was doing. She smiled this weird smile and whispered, "You'll understand soon enough." I couldn't take it anymore. Packed my shit, ready to bolt when Jack cornered me. He looked different, eyes wild, like he wasn't all there. He begged me to stay, said they needed me, that I was chosen. I booked it out of there, didn't look back. Called the cops when I got to town. They checked out the place, found the room in the basement just as I described. No sign of Jack or Sarah. They said it looked like some cult shit, but couldn't prove anything. I still have nightmares about that night. Sometimes I think I hear chanting in my sleep, or see shadows moving in the dark. Whatever those freaks were into, I want no part of it. So yeah, if you ever see a job ad that sounds too good to be true, trust your gut and run. You never know what kind of crazies you might end up living with.